On April 9, 1942, Bataan fell. 75,000 Allied troops surrendered, marking the largest mass surrender in American history. These men called themselves the battling bastards of Bataan. No mama, no papa, no Uncle Sam, and no hope. However, surrender was not the end of suffering, but the gateway to hell. Japanese commander Masaharu Homma had not anticipated such a vast number of captives. In the Japanese military dictionary, surrender was an unforgivable disgrace. To the Bushido-clad Imperial Army, these disarmed men were no longer human, but burdens to be cleared. A march of over 100 kilometers toward Camp O'Donnell began under the scorching Philippine sun. On the first day, the prisoners realized the Japanese logic: no food, no water, and certain death for those who fell behind. In the 40-degree tropical heat, guards not only refused water but forbade prisoners from drinking from roadside puddles. The most heinous acts were gratuitous executions. For sport or to vent frustration, Japanese soldiers would pick out prisoners for bayonet practice or drive tanks directly over wounded men collapsed from dysentery and malaria. This brutality was not isolated. It stemmed from an extreme hierarchy within the Japanese army and a morbid obsession with power over life. On this road, the dignity of civilization was trampled, leaving only primal survival instincts and a trail of bleached bones. Despite being in hell, the light of humanity flickered like a candle in the wind. A special brotherhood pact formed among the prisoners. Comrades took turns carrying the wounded, knowing that once a man fell, a Japanese bayonet would follow instantly. In extreme thirst, some utilized tropical dew to save lives. Others shared fantasies of burgers and steaks from home to sustain their fractured consciousness. This mutual aid born of despair was their strongest weapon against the dehumanization of the Japanese army. They were not just surviving for themselves, but to prove that even in the deepest abyss, the bayonet could pierce the flesh, but it could never truly strangle the human will and dignity. When the surviving POWs stumbled into Camp O'Donnell, they found not relief, but a quieter, more desperate slaughterhouse. Designed for 20,000, the camp was packed with over 50,000 men. Without medicine or clean water, malaria, dysentery, and scurvy spread like wildfire. Every morning, the heaviest task was carrying out the corpses of comrades. Japanese guards strictly monitored grain distribution and would purposely pour out clean water in front of parched prisoners. Death was no longer news, it was ambient noise. One survivor recalled, "At O'Donnell, you realize humans can become as light as ghosts." Extreme dehydration and hunger turn a man into a layer of dry skin over bone, eyes sinking deep into the skull. This exploitation of physical limits was the Japanese Army's final tool to break the spirit of the failures. To restore historical truth, we must dissect the logic behind this brutality. Why were Japanese soldiers so devoid of humanity? It stemmed from extreme hierarchical oppression and a culture of shame within their ranks. In the Imperial Army, corporal punishment from superiors was encouraged. This stolen dignity was then vented onto those of even lower status, the POWs. To them, the surrendered Americans were scrap who had lost their warrior souls. Abusing them carried no moral weight. Instead, it became a way to prove one's toughness. This loop of violence turned the Death March into a collective spree of crime. Every participating soldier was both a victim of a distorted system and a victimizer of the weak. This war machine, built on absolute obedience and contempt for life, was the true hand behind the Bataan tragedy. In 1945, when General MacArthur returned to the Philippines, the truth of Bataan shocked the world. Yet for those who returned from hell, the true march had just begun. Known as the Ghost Soldiers, they lived the rest of their lives in the shadow of PTSD. Some could not sleep without lights, some vomited at the sight of rice, and others could never find the words to describe the ordeal to their families. In the post-war Manila trials, although Masaharu Homma was executed, the names lost on the roadside and the youth pierced by bayonets could never be compensated for by a verdict. The Bataan Death March was more than a military defeat. It was a massive collapse of human civilization. It serves as a permanent reminder, when war grants absolute power to one group over another, the gates of hell swing wide. If the Bataan Death March was a slaughterhouse on land, the subsequent transportation on hell ships was a floating crematorium. In 1944, as Allied forces began their counteroffensive, the Japanese attempted to move the remaining POWs to mainland Japan for slave labor. These men were locked into pitch-black holds for weeks, with the Japanese refusing to provide basic water or ventilation. Under extreme oxygen deprivation and scorching heat, the holds turned into scenes of primal madness. Prisoners went insane from dehydration, some even killing one another for a single drop of sweat. Most ironically, as these ships carried no markings to indicate they held POWs, many hell ships were sunk by American submarines and aircraft. Thousands of comrades did not die by a Japanese bayonet but by fire from their own homeland. This ultimate absurdity pushed the survivors of Bataan to the very limit of human endurance. On a sea forgotten by civilization, life became cheaper than dust. After the Japanese surrender in 1945, the survivors of Bataan finally began their voyage home. However, as one veteran put it, "My body returned to Texas, but my soul remained in the tropical jungle of 1942. These survivors faced a brutal post-war existence. At the time, nothing was known about PTSD. These heroes were expected to act like men and reintegrate quickly. Yet many spent the rest of their lives battling nightmares, alcoholism, and irrational fears. Due to prolonged starvation, their bodies suffered irreversible damage, leading to a much shorter life expectancy than the average veteran. Even more tragically, as the Cold War began, the US government downplayed Japanese war crimes to secure Japan as an ally against the Soviets. The bastards of Bataan suffered a secondary trauma, being marginalized by political interests while carrying the physical scars of hell. The Bataan Death March was not only the most tragic page of the Pacific War, it permanently changed how international law defines the treatment of POWs. The 1949 Geneva Convention's reaffirmation and revision were largely driven by the stark contrast between the brutality in Bataan and the treatment in camps like those in the US. We revisit this history not to perpetuate hatred, but to anchor the baseline of civilization. It tells us that while war is the art of killing, even in extreme conflict, the protection of mercy and dignity for captives is the only metric that distinguishes a civilized army from war beasts. Today, as we lay wreaths at the Bataan Memorial, we do not only mourn those who died under the bayonet, we honor the belief that never flickered in the bloody jungle, that human will can be tortured but never conquered, and human dignity can be trampled, but history will eventually judge every atrocity.